All right. Good afternoon and good morning, Paddy, at your end. In India, it's good afternoon. We welcome everybody. Uh, you know, very recently, everybody in India must have read these words from a cricket icon last month. This icon said, "I felt like the loneliest guy in the world." Anybody would like to judge who, or make a guess who said this? These words were uttered by Indian cricket captain Virat Kohli recently when he was talking about his days of depression back in 2014. Surprised? He continued, "It's not a great feeling when you wake up knowing that you won't be able to score any runs, where you are not in control of anything at all." That sent shivers down everybody's spines. Telling words from one of the greatest icons today. And it shows that pressure can really put you down and you can't perform to your optimum level in any domain and at any level. Today's topic on developing positive mental health habits is a very apt one and would help everyone to understand positive mental strategies for positive outcome. Who better to talk about this topic than Mr. Paddy Upton, a renowned mental health coach and performance and strategic coach of Indian cricket team that won ICC World Cup back in 2011. Everybody still remembers MS Dhoni's those winning runs. I welcome you, sir, and everyone is eager to listen to your strategies. On a lighter side, Cricket Australia should seriously think on taking you on board, especially in the backdrop of a depleted Indian team defeating Australia in the last Test series in Australia. Maybe you can help the Kangaroos out there. But that was on the jest, yeah.
Okay.
Let me also welcome Colonel Commandant Professor Rajendra Kumar Anayat, Vice Chancellor of Deen Bandhu Choturam University of Sciences and Technology, Murthal. Recently, he's also appointed Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya Sonipat, all-woman university by the state. He's a brilliant academician and is an authority in printing technology world over. Besides his academic achievements, he's a Vedic scholar and an authority on Vedanta and holistic development of mind and body. We welcome you, Professor Anayat. I would also welcome partner in crime today, Ms. Ravneet Pahwa, Deputy Vice President Global and CEO South Asia, Deakin University, and his wonderful team. Vicky and Deakin University is working very closely and has launched a Vice Chancellor's Meritorious Scholarship for student community wishing to study in Deakin University. She would share the details about the scholarship during her address later. Now to start with, everybody is suffering from coronavirus. The pandemic has introduced a brand new set of challenges most of us haven't ever faced. It uprooted usual routines, induced stress and anxiety, and forced people out of their comfort zone, all of which may lead to changes in health, both mental and physical. Mental health, when we talk of mental health, includes more than just mental illness or disorders like depression, anxiety. It is also affected by diverse factors: emotional, psychological, social well-being. These are all various factors that contribute to a healthy mind. The state of our mental health affects our body, our ability to think, feel, act, handle stress, and how we make choices. Staying mindful just helps you manage stress better and stay calmer in situations you would normally panic or get anxious about. Some common practices to increase mindfulness includes meditations, spending time, nature, spending time alone, all these oft uses advantages. Another thing is detachment is attachment. Detachment and attachment is the mantra. Try to put your phone away to at least for a while every day. Disconnect from your virtual social circles and try to connect with your inner self instead. Instead of mindlessly scrolling social media apps, try to journal and write how you feel. Remember, that is the first step to treating mental health issues or preventing them. Playing sports, fitness training, they're all methods for staying positive mentally and also gives a sense of accomplishment and self-efficacy. The best way to maintain our mental health is to avoid getting sucked into negative patterns and spirals in the first place. Having a sense of gratitude. There are still things to be thankful for. For those who have a job, be thankful for that. For those who don't, that they have people around who care for them. There are many other things to be thankful for. You and your dear ones being safe in this pandemic should give you a sense of gratitude. I think with these words, I invite Professor Nair to share his views on staying positive by following Vedanta philosophy and how to align this with today's scientific environment. Professor Nair, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. G.B. Singh, Mr. Upton, Ms. Ravneet Bawa, and Vicky Chandigarh, and all those colleagues who have assembled here in this afternoon. I'm not here to make any speech. I'm more of a student today, just to listen. That great speaker who is going to deliver the subject in discussion, what Mr. G.B. Singh has already said. We're all going through this pandemic time. Everybody is suffering, including me. I just came out of my COVID a week ago. 14 days, I had to quarantine myself. And what in fact helped me was only that mental balance, what I could do. So when we talk about mental balance, the early systems of India, Bharat, what we call, from the very early days of caveman, man started asking questions on everything he saw around him. Why all these things are happening? Where does it all come from? What is the source of all these things? A number of questions. So this questioning ability is only with the mankind, not with any other creations in this world until today. So the sense of wonderment and the ability to question is only with the mankind. So whatever we found little interesting, we started asking questions like why, how, what is the reason? And finding an answers to all these questions made us the progress, whatever we see today. So from the plant kingdom to the animal kingdom, if you move, the plant kingdom had a complete form of everything, but nothing more than that. But from the nature, when it moved from a plant kingdom to animal kingdom, the animal kingdom had a fully developed body and a fully developed mind, I guess. Before that, when you look at plant kingdom, it also had the beginning of the mind because it could respond to maybe something like sunlight and water vapor. If you try to hold a cambium, it moves a little bit and it can grow. So it could respond a little bit in that. But when it comes to animal kingdom, they got a fully developed body and a fully developed mind. But when from the animal kingdom to the human kingdom, the transition happened, the nature or the creative system has given one extra element, one subtle thing that is called the intellect. In Indian language, we call Sharira, Mana, Buddhi, body, mind, and intellect. These are the three things. So the intellect, we may sometimes misunderstand even an animal has got that intelligence, but that is not that intelligence what human has. There is a big difference between that. So the questioning ability is not with the animal. A grazing animal can just walk around the meadows, and if it is eatable, it can eat, or it can just walk away. That's what it can do. But we human can ask a logical question and a rational question, find out what is right and what is wrong. And if I do this, will it affect somebody else? Can it hurt somebody else? What will be the impact? All these we can find out and take a decision out of it. So to tell everything in a crux, in Indian Vedanta, what we call the human body is more like a traditional blackboard, which is supported by 3 legs. So these 3 legs are your body, mind, and intellect. So how we are going to control all these things is very, very important. So the job of the body is nothing but implement what instruction comes to the organs through the senses. That's all, nothing more than that. So in every situation, in our system says, is take a common balance and put in 2 bowls. In one bowl, a mind, and another bowl, an intellect. So the job of the mind is to tell you the desires, because desires are unlimited, but objects are always limited. So there will be a clash in the world. We cannot have a satisfaction in this, because there could be one beautiful girl, 10 people want it. There could be one beautiful bungalow, 100 people want it. It's not possible. So the mind's job is only to talk about the desire. At same time, our intellect will differentiate it, analyze it, and it will tell what is what and whether we can go about it or not. And the outcome of this conversation between your mind and intellect will be implemented by your body. So for example, you don't like somebody else, just imagine, and your mind tells go and slap it, because that's the first feel we have. But your intellect will assess on this, analyze on this, and intellect will tell, don't do it. The police will come and catch you. You'll become a culprit and don't do it. You don't need to do that. It's not your job. The same thing will happen with in the mind of a thief, in the mind of a police, in the mind of a judge, and everything. So what is important here is there are certain systems in our tradition where we try to practice to overpower our intellect above mind, because intellect will be always overpowering the mind. So you put these 2 things in the bowl of a common balance. When this happens, the outcome will be very logical and sensible and reasonable. And that is the outcome which your body will implement. So at any point of time, when we take a decision, what we have to be aware of is whether the decision is coming from your intellect or your mind is very important. So only through practice we can do that. We will always take a decision which comes out of your intellect. Otherwise, it will be an instinct and impulse. Just like if you throw a stone, pelt a dog, what it can do is either it can bark you back, or it can just bite you, or it can run away. It cannot remember that this gentleman tried to trouble me yesterday. Every day morning, 9 o'clock, he goes to office. So I will wait in front of his home. And when he comes out, I will go and bite him. He cannot plan any such things at all. It can only do based on instinct and impulses. So 99.9% of the cases, any kinds of decisions which we take just out of an impulse may not work out really in the life. So that is where we have to even apply little bit on the intellect part. So this will be an interesting practice, and that's the way we need to take decisions as per some of the traditional systems what India talks about. This is just a gist. I just want to put it, because I'm nothing in this field. I'm just a mechanical engineer. My field is different, and my focus is different. I'm a printer. I'm here only to listen Mr. Ramchan and what he talks and how he deals with the people and how he contributed in success of team building, especially in India and many places in the world. And that will be the real treat which we are all waiting for. So I'm just thankful to FICCI Chandigarh and all the organizers and Mr. GB Singh especially for bringing me to this platform as a listener, not as a speaker. Don't think the other way. So thank you so much, Mr. GB Singh, and wish all the listeners a wonderful time ahead. Thank you.
You are on mute, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Professor. Wonderful to hear you, as always. Now, I may invite Ravneet Pava to, also take his organization and his views forward, and also maybe introduce Paddy in the larger terms.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, and a very good afternoon to everyone. Good morning to Paddy. It's a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for making time to attend this session, which is a very important and a very, very relevant one in these challenging times. Our gratitude to the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry to allow us a platform to organize this session. The strategic association between FICCI and Deakin University is aimed at awareness on such pressing issues, especially amongst academia, to help students and professionals achieve their goals. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely happy to announce that through this association, Deakin University is offering 100% scholarship to a deserving candidate for studies at Deakin University in the campus. This is worth $100,000 to start with for any course at Deakin University. So you can get the details of this particular scholarship that we are announcing with FICCI through this phone number or the link or the website that we have mentioned here. Friends, mental issues are now a global phenomenon, and each country and each individual is trying to deal with this emergency as it comes along. It is but pertinent that we recognize this platform and address the situation with a resolve to solve it. In India, experts are of the opinion that 1 out of every 5 individuals is experiencing some sort of mental health issue. WHO estimates that 56 million Indians suffer from depression and another 38 million suffer from anxiety disorders. If we just have a deep look at our own selves, we realize that in the last 16 months or so, each one of us have gone through our personal issues of mental health and disorders, given the external and the internal situation we are in. COVID-19 has now presented many challenges to students, educators, and parents. Children already coping with mental health conditions have especially been vulnerable to the changes and are learning to adapt and adopt all the time to the new rules of the land. In Australia, the issues and challenges on mental health have also been quite traumatizing. There have been a significant effort by the government and private organizations to help but put the lived experience and people with mental health issues, and research shows that it is not an easy one to deal with. I'm delighted, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our very, very own keynote speaker of this session and a very dear friend of Deakin University, Mr. Paddy Upton, who is one of the most renowned experts on mental health and has been supporting individuals and organizations unlock their unique A game in all work and life. Paddy, thank you so much for your support and speaking at this session. We appreciate you taking your valuable time to be with us here today. Paddy helped coach the Indian cricket team to win the 2011 World Cup and to become world's #1 test team, and then helped lead the South Asian cricket team to become the first to simultaneously hold the #1 position rankings in all formats of the game. He's been head coach in 3 of the world's major leagues, mental coach to over 100 professional athletes from 11 sports, and is a professor at Deakin University in Australia, and author of The Barefoot Coach, Life-Changing Insights from Coaching the World's Best Cricketers. Thank you for your time, and thank you for talking to us, Paddy.
Thank you very much, Ravneet and the esteemed panel, particularly for the invitation to come and share with the audience today something around mental health. So I'm going to just share my screen. We will have an opportunity to have some questions and answers at the end of the session. So I'm going to jump straight in, and what I'm going to share in the short time that we have together today is just 6 simple mental health habits. And the first one I'm going to jump straight in and talk to is around the concept of perspective. And just to know, regardless of what might be going on in your life, it's seldom as bad as it might seem in the mind. And one of the stories that really is one of my favorite stories, and it does go back a long way, but a particular favorite in India, I know Jonty Rhodes. Jonty was playing in the South African test team quite a number ago while he was still a player, and he didn't really have a good enough batting talent to be able to maintain his position in the test team. He was a great one-day player, obviously a very busy batsman, an unbelievable fielder, but technically he was really struggling to keep his place as number 6 batsman in the test team. And we're playing a home series in South Africa, and Jonty needed to score runs to be selected and hold his place in the team. We were playing Pakistan at the time in Johannesburg. The South African team really wasn't doing well in that test match. Jonty went out to bat. Early on in his innings, he got an inside edge onto his pad. The bowlers appealed and the umpire gave him out. LBW, back in those days, we didn't have any DRS, so there was no recourse. It was obvious to everybody close by that Jonty wasn't out because he had got an edge, but nonetheless, the finger went up and he left the field of play. I remember very distinctly, I was the fitness trainer of the South African team back in those days. Hansie Corneer was the captain, Bob Woolmer the coach. And I remember at the end of this particular day, the team, as I said, we hadn't done well and the mood was very low. And I looked across the change room to see Jonty sitting there. And Jonty in that South African team was the person who was the energizer bunny. He was the enthusiast, the optimist, the people who would go around and constantly just lift the energy. He's a very high energy individual still today. And I remember looking across the change room and Jonty was sitting very quietly sulking. And I remember sitting there thinking, I've never seen Jonty upset like this before. I didn't quite know what to do, whether I should go and approach him or leave it alone, but there was a very awkward silence in the change room. And while I was watching Jonty, I saw him just tilt his head to the side a little bit and his sort of eyes looked up and he held this funny position for maybe 30 seconds. And then he immediately stood up and Jonty was back. He was full of energy. He was bouncing around the change room again. He was saying, come on, guys, we're still in this. Let's pick our heads up. We can't put our heads down now. We're still in the game. There's lots to play for. And he went around the room and Jonty just picked everyone up and picked everyone up. And things were back to the way that they should have been, much to my relief. And I remember going a bit later that evening back at the hotel, and I went to Jonty's room and I explained to him what I saw. And I wanted to understand what had happened that had changed him from going from so upset to so energized within that 30 seconds of sitting with his head tilted in a funny position. And he explained to me that he was sitting underneath a television set in the change room. And at the time, the volume is always turned down in all cricket change rooms. The team don't want to hear what the commentators had to say. But there was just enough noise for Jonty to be able to hear what was going on in the TV above him. And with the game being over, the 6 o'clock news was on. And Jonty sat there and he told me that he listened to the report at the time of, it was the day where the greatest number of women and children were killed in modern war history. And this was in the Bosnian War that was going on at the time. And Jonty said to me, I couldn't believe that I was sitting there in a cricket change room, sulking about being given out LBW in a test match and maybe losing my test position when there was people dying in Bosnia. And I realized then that cricket and test cricket and playing for your country is just a game in the context of what's actually important in the world. And regardless of what your situation is, and if you think things are really bad, pick your head up and look around. And particularly, it sometimes helps to look at people who are a lot worse off than yourself to give some perspective of the fact that your situation, it might for you feel quite bad, but with perspective, it's probably not nearly as bad as what it might seem. Added to that, the next simple tip is, and this is stuff we know, all of these 6 simple tips I'm telling you today is things that you know. I'm just reminding you of the things we know. And it's to have the right attitude, particularly to the things that are outside of our control. Now, I know we all know this, but sometimes with things we know, we actually start really seeing it for the value that it is because we think we know. And generally, all of us as human beings, the world around us is how it is out there. The problems that we create for ourselves is when we have an idea of how we think the world should be. And when our idea of what we think should be happening in the world, or think what people should be doing or what shouldn't be doing, is different to what's actually happening, whenever this happens, we end up at conflict with the world around us, because we're essentially, what we're doing is we are resisting current reality. We are judging it, particularly if we judge what is happening as wrong, excuse me, as bad, judge it as negative. All we do is we create stress and anxiety for ourselves within our own mind. So the question is, and all of us, every single one of us, myself included, finds ourselves falling into this trap. And the question is, where might you at the moment be judging what is currently happening in the world as wrong, as bad, as shouldn't be happening, and you think something different should be happening than what is happening? And some of the most common places, for example, is traffic. It's always interesting, probably more so in the Western world than in India. People get so upset when they find themselves stuck in traffic. The reality is the traffic does not care what you think about it. It's just traffic. Another very typical one is the weather. It's incredible how many people still in the modern day get so upset when they have a certain plan, and on that particular day, the weather is not what they think the weather should be, and they get upset because it's rainy or it's windy. Again, the weather really does not care what you think about it. The weather just happens, and it's up to us to wear the appropriate clothing, take an umbrella if need be. And the problem is never actually with the weather, it's with our attitude to the weather, or the clothing that we're wearing is generally the only problem. And of course, in the world at the moment, the current reality is there is a virus around. Whether we like it, whether we don't, whether we agree with the Chinese or Dr. Fauci or whoever it might be, it doesn't matter. Many of us are upset about the way people are responding to the virus, with having lockdowns too strict, or not enough lockdowns, or lockdowns too late. Or there's people who believe in the vaccine, there's people who don't believe in the vaccine, there's all sorts of theories and that out there, and people in resistance to the current reality. The reality is there is a virus, it is what it's doing, and people, particularly in decision-making positions, will make whatever decisions they can. And it's up to us to get really upset about it, or to accept it and have the right attitude towards those things that are outside of our control. So the key question here is, where are you allowing things that are outside of your control to negatively impact your experience of life? And it's about simply seeing that you're doing that, smiling at it, and moving more into a place of acceptance or surrender to what is happening out there that is outside of our control. And when we surrender or we accept what's going on in the current moment, effectively, it requires us to have the right attitude to those things that are outside of our control. And immediately, so many unnecessary stresses just fall off our shoulders and out from inside our head. Directly linked to that, around having the right attitude to things that are outside of our control, it's then to assess, so what are the things that are inside my control, and then to take the right action or the smart action, or to foster good habits where I do have an impact on the things that are happening around my world. And there's a very simple exercise I'm going to talk through here, which is something I've been doing in these programs I've been running with businesses and sports teams around helping team members and employees find their A game. But I'm going to tell you maybe the story behind this, which I was in one of my favorite stories. In 2013, the Rajasthan Royals cricket team, they won the first IPL, and then they spent the next 4 years near the bottom of the log. The main reason that they were at the bottom of the log for those 4 years was that the owners, all teams had about $13 million that they'd go into the IPL auction to buy players. The owners of this particular team gave the team only $6.5 million, half the salary cap, to go into the auction, and they kept the other half of the salary cap back to run the franchise. So in the auction, the team just did not have the money to be able to compete for the big name, highly experienced players. They had to employ a strategy where they found young up and coming talent that came for free or very cheap, and that's what they picked. So for those 4 years, the Rajasthan Royals were the underdog team. They just did not have as good players as the other 7 teams had. So they effectively earned their place at the bottom of the log. In that year, in 2013, Rahul Dravid was the captain. Him and I had spent a lot of time working together and talking about how we believe the future of cricket coaching needed to go. And Rahul phoned me and said, Paddy, rather than do this mental coaching stuff and do this work around coaching coaches and coaching leaders around the future of coaching, why didn't you come and actually do it yourself? Now, I'd never coached a cricket team in my life then. I'd never planned to be a head coach, but it seemed like a wonderful challenge to see, can we do something with this young, cheap underdog team? I won't go into the detail now, but one of the key things that I did when I first arrived with the team was we looked at the T20 stats at the time and looked at what are the most important statistics in T20 cricket. And at the time, and still today, one of the most important things is the teams that win are the teams that hit the most 4s and 6s. So what I did is I took our top 7 batsmen and I looked at our ability to hit 4s and 6s compared to the top 7 batsmen of the other 7 IPL teams. And what it turned out is that we were 8th out of 8 in terms of our ability to hit 4s and 6s. Now, one of the ways to stop teams hitting 4s and 6s is you need to get their 4 and 6 hitting batsmen out. So I looked at our top 7 bowlers, at their ability to get the top 7 batsmen out in the other team in terms of how many balls does it take on average before they get a top 7 batsman out. And we compared them with the top 7 bowlers of all the other 7 IPL teams. And as it turned out, we were 7th out of 8 in terms of our ability to get opposition batsmen out. So with that statistics that we had done, it was very clear why the team had been at the bottom of the log for 4 years in a row, because they did not have the players to score the 4s and 6s, and they did not have the bowlers to get the opposition 4 and 6 hitters out. But it wasn't enough for me then to turn around to the owners and say, I'm sorry, you haven't given me a good enough team to be able to do anything. So we needed to find a different way to go about our campaign that we had done in the last 4 years. And we looked at a lot of different areas. And eventually the answer had been sitting under our nose the whole time. Remember, I said this auction strategy that the team employed was one of getting young, high potential players. And the key came in the word young. We knew we were fitter, faster, stronger, more athletic than all of the other teams who had some senior, older statesmen and older players in their team. So we decided to make maximum use of this speed, strength, and what we did in the team then is we decided to make 1s and 2s really, really important. At the time and still today, 1s and 2s do not feature on the highlights package. They do not feature in the report. They don't get the big applause, and they don't actually even feature in terms of being a statistic that makes a significant difference in T20 cricket. But we chose to value the 1s and 2s, which meant when we were fielding, we would put our body on the line and dive to try and save every single 1 run that we could save. When we were batting, we'd run the 1s and 2s as hard as we could. We made sure we were very clear which were the older players or the slower fielders in the opposition team, which fielders had a sore shoulder or shoulder injuries that they couldn't throw really hard. Those fielders, even if they had the ball in their hand in the boundary, we knew we could run a single to their shoulder because they didn't have a great shoulder. And we spent the entire season fighting for 1s and 2s in a game where theoretically 1s and 2s don't count. At the end of that 2013 season, with exactly the same players that had come bottom of the log for 4 years, we ended up making the IPL finals. In 2013, there was still a Champions League. At the Champions League, we went unbeaten up until losing in the last over of the finals against Mumbai Indian. And in that same season, we scored 13 out of 13 home wins, which remains still to this day the longest home run winning streak in any IPL team in the history of IPL. Is that 2013 Rajasthan Royals team, that bunch of underdogs who won 13 out of 13 home games. At the end of that season, The 22 matches we played between the IPL and the Champions League. When we took those average of those all those 22 matches and we looked at 4s and 6s, opposition hit on average 18 runs more than us per game. For 22 games, they hit 18 runs more than us in 4s and 6s. When it came to 1s and 2s, we scored on average 21 runs per game more than the opposition. So we ended up doing exceptionally well and even breaking, as I said, that home run win record by really placing a high value on 1s and 2s, and the possibility of scoring 1s and 2s and saving runs and 2s are available almost every single ball. Where 4s and 6s, those big things in business, it's like signing the big client or the big deal, they're only available every now and again, but the 1s and 2s are available all the time. In fact, if we take one of the biggest milestones any cricket can ever achieve, and India today are going into the World Test Championship final, the best thing any player can accomplish in this game is to score 100 runs. In Test cricket, almost every 100 is made up of more 1s and 2s than 4s and 6s. You cannot score a Test 100 without regularly accumulating your 1s and 2s. But the reality is those 1s and 2s do not feature on the highlights package. They do not get big applause, but they significantly count. So the question I have for each one of us here is, where are your 1s and 2s in life? Those small daily habits that can potentially change your game if you slowly accumulate them day by day. And I'm going to give you a very simple exercise here, and I would invite you to take a screenshot of the screen so you can actually go away. And one of the ways to do this is to take your life and divide it into, say, 8 or 10 areas. And here's just some examples here. Look at your family life. Look at your social life. Many of us, it's not very existent at the moment in lockdowns. Your studies, your sport, your hobbies, exercising, diet, service, whether it's your yoga, your meditations, whatever's important in your life. Come up with 8 to 10 areas and then look at those areas as a simple investment versus return equation, where the return is the quality of experience you're having in that area. So actually score us out of 10. How happy are you in each one of those areas within your life? And if you want to be happier or to have a better quality of experience in that life, what it requires is our investment. We need to make slight changes to our investment in those areas. And the investments in any other area of our lives is an investment in either time or in the habits, the kind of things we do. So take a screenshot of this exact screen. I really recommend it, and do the exercise. You don't have to use those 8 things that I've got there. Put your own things in there. Rate how happy are you at the moment out of a score of 1 to 10. That's your return. And then look at rate, how much time and effort am I investing in that area, and give it a score out of 10. And then based on that equation, you'll be able to see how can I use my time or create slightly different habits that might give me a better quality of experience or return in terms of satisfaction in any one of those areas. So that's about taking the right action and creating good habits in those areas of our life over which we have full control. The next piece is around serving others. And again, this is something we know, but to remind us. And one of the questions that I've been asking a number of people is, are some personal values actually better than others? And if we were to be really honest and look at, so what were some of the most sought after and prized and rewarded values pre-COVID? There were things like popularity was highly rewarded and sought after. Things like status, whether it's smart shoes or for adults, a really fancy car or a fancy house in a fancy area. Fame was very much pursued, and famous people were put on a pedestal, be it in Bollywood, be it in sport, even be in business. People hankered after fame, and those famous people really rode the coattails of their fame. And of course, one of the things we're really focused on is accumulating some form of like on whatever platform we were on. These types of values were very much, as I said, sought after and rewarded pre-COVID. The thing about this category is they're all about me. It's about how I look, how I feel, how I am through the eyes of other people. And the more we pursue pursuits that are about me and making me feel good, research tells us that that is one of the fastest routes to depression. Thinking about ourselves, building ourselves, and thinking the world owes me something. In contrast, values that are other-oriented around other people are well known to build well-being, to make life a much better and easier place to be. So values like in any way turning and looking to others and see where can I provide somebody else a helping hand, a lift up from the situation, where can I make it about somebody else? A kind word. There are so many people out there today who would love to have a kind word, and it's something so simple, but while it uplifts the other person, a kind word and a sincere and genuine, authentic kind word offered to somebody else actually has a larger impact and feel good on the person offering it than the person receiving it. Being in service. Again, one of the best antidotes for depression is to go and be in service of something or some other person that you have an affinity or you value. It might be going to help kids. It might be to help animals. It might be to help old people. For me, it's the environment. I'm passionate about the ocean. So if I go and I spend a morning cleaning litter off the beach, I feel so good about myself afterwards because I'm serving and I'm making something greater than myself better. I'm improving it. I'm making the world around me a slightly better place. And who benefits? I benefit more from the experience of doing it than the actual world does benefit. And any value that is other-oriented is uplifting, it builds, and it moves us. It's expansive, and it moves us further from depression. So it's empathy, caring, listening, it's teamwork, helping others, any values. And what I strongly suggest here is that values that are about other people or other-oriented, particularly post-COVID, are going to be much more rewarded, much more valued, and much stronger building blocks of success than those values that are self-serving about me. And again, and it's not one or the other. I'm not saying one definitely serves us and the world better. And it's just having a healthy balance between having values and pursuits that serve you and having values that serve other people or something greater than yourself. And a healthy balance is really what I'm talking about here. It's not just one or the other. The fifth of the sixth is around fear and anxiety. And again, there's more fear and anxiety now in the world than probably what there has ever been, certainly on a large scale. Where does fear and anxiety come from? It's very simple. It comes from me being here now in this present moment and my mind dwelling on something maybe going wrong in the future. And the gap between when I am now in time and my mind is in the future, that is called the anxiety gap or the fear gap. The gap in time between where my mind is, where I am and my mind is. And we can only feel fear and anxiety if we're thinking about something that might go wrong in the future. So that's the nature of fear. There's no actual thing as fear. It's a concept that we create for ourselves in our own minds by constantly thinking about something that might go wrong in the future. So one, it's to be aware of that we create the concept of fear. One of the easiest ways to alleviate fear is to come back and focus on the present moment and taking the right action about whatever I can do to avoid that thing happening in the future. So if you're worried about getting COVID, take your vitamins, take your exercise, get yourself healthy, boost your immune system, and do whatever you can and take the right action. But the fear is just going to paralyze us. And of course, it's being courageous sometimes around the action. And one of my favorite stories came from that same 2013 Rajasthan Royals season. We were playing a home game against a team by the name of Sunrisers Hyderabad. They had an opening bowler by the name of Dale Steyn, who was going to be coming to us. It was a day-night game. We had a very hard, bouncy green wicket in Jaipur at the time, which was going to obviously favor Dale Steyn's fast bowling. And I did not want to expose our top 3 batsmen to Dale Steyn. We knew the strategy that Sunrisers would employ with Dale was he would bowl 2 overs up front with a new ball when it was swinging. Dale always swings the ball away from the right-hand batsman. And we knew then they would take him off after 2 overs and he would come back at the end of the game and bowl the 2 death overs. I did not want our top 3 batsmen to face 12 balls of Dale Steyn with a brand new ball on a hard green wicket at night time when the ball was going to swing violently away from the right-hander. And we only had right-handed batsmen at the time. Guys like Karun there, Rahul Dravid, Jinky Rahane, and Shane Watson were our top 4 batsmen. So the plan was the 2 opening batsmen would go out. And if we lost a wicket, while Dale still had some deliveries of his first 2 overs, I wanted somebody who was expendable to go out and bat, whose job it was just to survive Dale Steyn, to see off his 12 balls, and then immediately the next batsman in would be Shane Watson, and the plan with Shane Watson would then attack whoever came on to bowl after Dale on that nice bouncy, hard bouncy wicket that wasn't going to turn at all. So I looked around the team and there was this youngster by the name of Sanju Samson. He was 18 years old at the time. He was the youngest player to play in IPL. It was his, he hadn't played many games. He was down to bat number 8 for us. He was the wicketkeeper batsman. And if you get down to number 8 in T20 cricket, you've lost the game anyway. So I went to Sanju and I said, Sanju, I want you to pad up when it's our batting innings. If we lose a wicket and Dale has still got balls to bowl in his first 2 overs, I want you to go out and your job is to survive Dale Steyn. Happy? And he said, I'm happy. Although I must say, I'm not sure how happy this young 18-year-old was. So anyway, we arrived at the game and we were preparing to go out into our batting innings. And I remember walking out to go and watch the game. And we had a certain strategy at the Rajasthan Royals there, in that players were asked to take responsibility for their own preparation and tell us what they needed to prepare for the game. And as I was walking out the change room, I realized I hadn't spoken to Sanju about his plan to face the world's #1 fast bowler at the time. So I went over to him in the change room and I said, and very briefly for the listeners here, the strategy to survive Dale Steyn in his first 2 overs of a T20 game is very, very simple. Number 1, guaranteed every ball is going to be pitched full because Dale doesn't want to bowl bounces and hurt people. He wants to get them out. So he's going to bowl full, and every one of those 12 balls is going to swing away from the right-handed batsman. So the strategy is simple. First of all, you stand deep in your crease to give yourself more time to see the ball because he's bowling at 150 kilometers an hour. As he gets into his delivery stride, you can automatically look to play on the front foot because you know the ball is going to be pitched full. If the ball starts straight, you're looking to defend it. If it starts just outside the stump line as a right-hander, the ball is always going to naturally swing away from the bat, so you can just leave it alone. So strategy simple, deep in your crease, play forward, defend the straight one. If it starts outside the stump line, you just leave it alone. But our strategy, as I said, was not then, and it's still not now, is not to tell people what to do. It's to ask people what they're going to do, because I want people to think through things for themselves. And I said to Sanju, so what's your plan? And he said, well, I know Dale is going to bowl full and straight, and he's going to try and swing me out. So straight away in my head, I'm happy. Sanju knows what to do. But his answer took me by surprise. He said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand half a meter outside my crease, closer to Dale, so that I can get the ball in the half volley. I know his mid-on and his mid-off, the fielders either side of him, are going to be nice and close, saving the one. So if he does pitch the ball full, I'm going to hit him back over his head. And I remember laughing, and it was a nervous and embarrassed laughter going, you cannot be serious. You're a young 18-year-old in your first IPL, and your plan to survive the best bowler in the world is to hit him back over his head. But our strategy that season was attacking and smart. And Sanju, clearly he had chosen an attacking option and he had thought it through. So he had ticked both of those boxes. I've been smart, I thought it through, and I'm taking the attacking option. And he would have been pretty scared, I can promise you that. Anyway, I walked out and I sat next to Shane Watson and Rahul Dravid, and I said, you guys won't believe what Sanju's plan is to face Dale. And I told both of them, and both of them had a similar nervous laughter to me. Well, we can see here at the bottom of the screen, the score is 16 for 1. We've lost our wicket. And here's Sanju facing Dale, and you'll see on the replay exactly where Sanju is standing in his crease.
Steen is steaming in. Oh, that's gone. What a shot, Samson. Yes, bang maximum. What a shot that is. Wow, we're talking about taking on the best in the business. And he did it so effortlessly. What a talent Samson is.
146.6 deliberate corners an hour. Just hit through the line of the ball. Lifted Dale Steyn, one of the world's best opening bowlers. Straight back over his head for a maximum 6.
Couldn't have middled it any better.
Okay, so sometimes when we have a fear, what we want to be doing is really getting on the front foot and being nice and courageous and taking it on, rather than what fear often does to people. It gets us to back off and hold back. We want to think things through, get on the front foot, and be courageous. And finally, the last piece of the 6 things, and again, we all know this, is regardless of what is currently happening in your life, currently happening in your city, or currently in your country, or even in the world in terms of the current COVID situation, just know that this too shall pass. It is temporary. We will move on, and the next situation will come along. And regardless of where you find yourself in your life, things working well or things not working well, just know that everything in life is temporary, that this too shall pass. So it's not worth getting too attached to what's happening now in the current moment. So there are just 6 simple, in a short space of time, a couple of simple tips to hopefully, and even if there's one thing that you can take away that might be of value, just to help you get into a slightly better, more positive mental space to be able to navigate whatever it might be that you're needing to navigate in your life at the moment. Thank you very much, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Paddy. This is Karan. This was really inspiring and helpful. We have some specific questions from the participants. First is, how can one monitor mental health? What's healthy in this situation and what's concerning?
Sorry, can I just come in and say, whoever is speaking, your voice is not very clear. There's an echo. So you may need to just see what you can do about that.
Am I better now? Is it better now?
Yeah, this is better. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you
Paddy.
ask the question again?
Yeah. How can one monitor mental health? What's healthy in this situation and what's concerning?
So that's a very good question. How can one monitor mental health? What is healthy and what's concerning? So the first most important thing with almost anything relating to the mind is awareness. If we have awareness, it gives us a certain amount of control to do something about the thing which we're aware. If we lack awareness and something's happening, it will then have control over us. So the first thing is around mental wellness or mental health, is to be aware of what is my current state of mental health, and to ask the question. And again, I gave you the exercise a little bit earlier. It's not just to ask it in general, ask it very specifically, what is my state of mental health around my family, around my physical health, around my emotional health, my mental health, and to really assess and come up with an understanding of where am I? From the position of awareness, we can then do something about those areas where we feel things aren't quite working. And then hopefully one of these 6 things can work. Sometimes it's just a case of getting perspective and it's not changing what's going on. So for example, I've just come out of 15 days of COVID. I was alone at home and sick at the same time that my 80-year-old parents both had COVID and my brother had COVID. We living in different places and we weren't able to go and look after them. So it was a very uncomfortable and difficult situation. I'm worried about my health. I'm sick, my brother's sick, and my 80-some-plus-year-old parents are sick, and we've particularly worried about them. A really uncomfortable situation, but the question is, so what are the things we can do about this to stabilize each one of ourselves and to provide the best support for our parents? And once we've done that, then it's about handing over, letting go, having perspective. Once we did everything that we could do So it was a very uncomfortable situation, but I could have stayed at home being sick and highly stressed about my parents' health, which probably would have made me sicker and really compromised me. Or what we can do is ask the question, so what can I do that is in my power, and do everything that's in my power to help myself and people around me, and then to have perspective and to accept the things that are outside of my control and not have them overly stress me. So it's a very good question. That's a very broad question, but awareness, number one, then take action where you can, number two, and where you have no control, to have the right attitude to the things that are outside of your control. And all that you need to do is take your current state of mental health and just make it 5% better, which gives you a little bit more clarity, which gives you a little bit more direction, which then puts you in a position to take the next 5% adjustment towards getting to a better space. So, and I would always recommend to pick the low-hanging fruit, to pick the stuff that is easiest to get right. The quick wins, the easy wins, the ones and twos is where to start.
Thank you, Mr. Paddy. Another question that we have is, if I have only 5 minutes every day to focus on building mental strength, what exercise should I do?
If you've only got 5 minutes to focus on mental health,
Yeah.
I would say that you're very lazy, and I would say that you don't value mental health nearly enough if you're only prepared to allocate 5 minutes. I would say that's the problem. We need to be allocating a lot more time to mental health, not just mental health. The single most important asset that any one of us here on this listening in has in this life is our health. There is nothing more valuable than your health, because without your health, you have no life. So our biggest investments need to be in our physical health. Get your right exercise and eat the right food. Every single one of us here knows what exercise we need to be doing, and we know what foods we need to be eating and not eating. But the reality is we're not all following what we know. So physical health, look after it. Your emotional health, which largely it relates to relationships and to people around you. The single biggest determinant of happiness and longevity and health in life, and this comes from the longest ever study done on humans, has proven that the most valuable thing in terms of our health, our longevity, is the quality of relationships. So attend to your physical health, number one. Your emotional health is directly related to the quality of relationships with people that are important to you, number two. And if you get your physical and your emotional health right, it will naturally contribute towards getting your mental health right. I've given you 6 tips here. There's a lot of information out there, but do not allocate 5 minutes to mental health. Allocate a large portion of your time to look after your mental, emotional, and physical health, because without that, you have nothing.
Thank you. We can take one more question. It is, do you think athletes cope with pressure and stress better than many other people? In short, does high intensity exercise or sports in one's lifestyle help cope with pressures better?
Okay, excellent question that. Do athletes cope with mental health issues better than other people? And do they cope with pressure and stress? The answer is no, they don't. What they do much better than other people is they hide the pressures, the stresses, the fears, the anxieties, the doubts, and the negative thoughts much better than the average person. I've never met even the best athletes in the world, including MS Dhoni's and the Virat Kohli's and Rahul Dravids, who don't have doubts. They all have them. They all have insecurities. They all have negative thoughts. They all question themselves. They just hide it better than other people. And I'm not for 1 second recommending hiding doubts, negativities, insecurities, negative thoughts. What I'm saying is they're perfectly normal. They're perfectly okay. The problem happens is when we start really believing them and buying into them. So having doubts, negative thoughts, pressures, fears, etc., that's not a problem. That's normal. That's okay. If you've got those, welcome to the human race. The problem is buying into those. And in terms of exercise, the second part of your question, very high intensity exercise for more people is actually stressful than not stressful. So I would not recommend very high levels of intensity for the average person. That actually places a fairly significant stress on your body. And certainly if you've had COVID, you definitely don't want to be engaging in very high intensity exercise. You want to just be engaging in a fairly moderate level of exercise, and ideally different exercises. So maybe it's walking, or playing sport is a very good exercise, whether it's badminton or tennis ball, cricket, or whatever it might be. And doing, if you're slightly older, you want to be doing some form of weight training to be able to maintain your muscles. But I would say the exercise needs to be varied. Number one, don't do the same thing over and over. You must be doing some exercise, and just do it at a moderate intensity for the average person.
Thank you. So now I will just ask Ms. Ravneet to give a concluding vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. In fact, Paddy, I have to say I really, really did enjoy this session because I can relate to it very much so, because we all are going through, I think, all the pressures of life that you talked about. I really think what you said in terms of the 6 aspects that one needs to take care of, looking at your mental health, I think is very, very important. Keeping perspective is a very important aspect of where you go from where you are, you know, and what is that in relevance to where the world is, and what is that in relevance to, you know, what the life situation is. And I think in this pandemic, that is a very true form. There are people who are suffering, who are dying, and then we worry about the smaller things in life and cause stress. And I think that's where you create the very specific keeping perspective aspect. I think avoiding conflict in one's mind. I was reading a quote somewhere where it said, your own thoughts are the worst enemies, you know, and you've got to really manage those, and you've got to keep those positive. I think that's really important. Right attitude. I have a question for you. Sorry, I mean, I don't know whether I was supposed to ask you this question or not, or given the time, but I still want to ask you the question, Paddy. How do you get yourself to have the right attitude? I mean, all of the above, what you said, all that you mentioned was relevant, but sometimes your thoughts do take over your mind. So how do you ensure you build the right attitude?
So right attitude is not about always having a right attitude and never having a wrong attitude. It's just about having a right attitude more often, around more things, more regularly, and being okay with getting it wrong sometimes. The wrong attitude is, I refer to the wrong attitude is, it's like a weeds that grow in our mind. If our mind's in the right place, we naturally have the right attitude to most things. The wrong attitude is when we get caught up, as I said, with negative thoughts or wrong thoughts. Those are weeds. And what's important for each one of us individually, particularly as we go through life, is to understand what are the weeds that normally grow in my mind. Because each of us have only got 2 or 3 species of weeds that grow in our mind. And it's the same weeds that keep coming up over and over again. And with awareness, we come to realize, what are my weeds? So when that weed comes up, so it might be around procrastination or laziness or bad habits or getting too quick to anger or irritation, find what is your weed, because that weed that comes up in your mind, it's come up so many times in your life before. It's undermined your relationships, you've undermined yourself, you haven't done yourself favors. So take time to figure out what are my weeds. It's not going to stop them growing, but it gets us to recognize them a little bit earlier so we can pull them out, just nip that in the bud, which will naturally allow the correct attitude to flow, because as humans, that's natural, you know, to have the right attitude. So find your weeds, recognize it, and pull them out, and do it in a relaxed and playful way. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to always have the right attitude and have this perfectionistic attitude. That in itself is a weed. Cut yourself some slack. Life is just a game. It's here to be enjoyed. And any game, we make mistakes, and that happens in life, and it happens in attitude. That's okay. Smile at it and keep moving forwards.
Fantastic. That's very, very good. And I think I really like your point about once you know what the issue is, find a solution or action to it. And serving others, I think what you said, anxiety and fear, dealing with that, very, very relevant to every day of our lives right now. I love your thought about the ones and twos of life. I think, sitting and watching a nice show that you want to are the ones and twos that you really enjoy. Having that right food that you like, the friend that you want to talk to, the drink that you want to have, the bed you want to sleep on. Yeah. I think these are the little pleasures of life that we all enjoy. And I think it's really, really important to do that. I think your point about empathy is a very relevant one too. And all my friends and colleagues that are hearing would agree with me that will bring us to the point of saying, thank you so much, Paddy, for talking to us today, and also giving us the relevance of the pandemic situation, that we are all going through. Physical, mental, social, and emotional health, is the most important thing in our lives. And let's all work to help each other to be better at that and deal with the situation in a much better manner. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. Awesome. Thank you, Vicky, for helping organize this. And thank you, Paddy, once again for your time. Stay safe, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.